Welcome back, Better Call Saul fans. Today, I'm going to go through 20 predictions that I've come up with for the remaining 6 episodes of Better Call Saul. We've all been through this before, but I gotta say it. If you have not watched up to Season 6, Episode 7, Plan and Execution of Better Call Saul, you should not be on this video. Get out of here. Also, there are no spoilers in this video. There are no leaks in this video. I have not looked for any of those. I don't want to see them. I don't want to hear them. If you know what's going to happen next, do not put it in the comments below. I don't want to see that. I know a lot of other people don't want to see that as well. Also, some of these I'll go through really quickly. Some of these I'll take more time. Now, before we get into it, I just got to say right off the bat, most, maybe all of these are going to be wrong. Just being completely honest with you guys, Peter Gould said in an interview last week, he has not seen any predictions that come close to how this show's going to end. On Talking Saul, after Season 6, Episode 7, the Plan and Execution episode, Bob, Ray, and Patrick, Fabian, Howard Hamlin, they were all sitting together and someone asked a question. I forgot what the question was, but one of them said, one of the actors said, "You will not guess how this ends." And all the other two that didn't say it, they all nodded in agreement. Okay? And then, of course, we can't forget what Mike said in episode either 2 or 3 of Season 6 when he says, whatever happens next, it's not gonna go down the way you think it is. So all that said, if you don't want to listen to bad predictions that won't come true, feel free to not watch. And this might be a little bit of fun for us to come back and revisit to see if any of these actually did come back. Also, if you've got your own predictions, put them in the comments below. Again, predictions, not spoilers. No one wants spoilers. So with that said, let's dive into my 20 predictions. Number 1, Nacho's dad, Manuel. I think he's going to live, but I also do not think we're going to see him again the rest of the series. I think the Salamancas are going to be focused on Gus. I think Lalo's going to be focused on Gus. I don't think, and boy, I really hope that they're going to leave him alone and we're just going to pretend that he's going to live a nice, long, happy life, maybe not knowing what happened to his son. But he is not going to be harmed. So that's my first prediction. My second prediction is that in Season 6, Episode 8, the one that we're waiting to come on up, I think Jimmy is going to tell Lalo the truth about what happened in the desert with Mike. And of course, that was in the Bagman episode, Season 5, Episode 8. And I think when Jimmy tells Lalo what actually happened in the desert, how Mike saved him, how there was a group of, assassins trying to kill Jimmy and prevent Lalo from getting out of jail, I think Mike's going to find out about this, and that's going to be a source of tension between Mike and Jimmy. So I've talked about in a previous video that I really see a difference in the relationship between Mike and Jimmy in Better Call Saul and Mike and Saul in Breaking Bad. I just see a different relationship there. It's much more tense in Breaking Bad, and there's more familiarity and camaraderie, honestly, in Better Call Saul. So I think we're going to see what's going to happen there, and I think Jimmy telling Lalo the truth about what happened in the Bagman episode, I think that's going to be a big source of tension between Jimmy and Mike, and that's going to explain that unanswered question that I have about why do they hate each other in Breaking Bad. Now, my third prediction here is that Kim is going to live past Episode 8, Season 6, the very next one that we have coming up on July 11th, when Lalo's in the apartment with them. Again, I have not seen that episode, nor have I looked at any leaks, so that is a complete guess. That said, I just can't imagine that we would lose Kim with this many episodes left to go. And I have seen some people speculate that Kim might meet her demise in that episode, but boy, I just think we've got more story left for Kim, so I think she's going to make it well past Episode 8. My fourth prediction that I have is that Kim is not going to use the vacuum cleaner guy. I think that if they did that one more time after Walt's used it, after Jesse's used it, after Saul's used it, I think they run the risk of overusing that tactic. I also think it was a little too cute for them to show Kim looking at the card so directly as we saw earlier in Season 6. So I don't think that's where we're going with Kim's character. I don't think she's going to use the vacuum cleaner guy. My prediction number 5, though, I do think Kim is going to go to jail, at least for a period of time. And she might actually be out of jail by the time that we get to the Gene timeline. There is also a chance that she could go into witness a relocation program. Now, either of those scenarios would provide more screen time for Suzanne Erickson, the assistant DA, who warned Kim earlier in season 6, episode 3, about their suspicions that Saul was knowingly working with someone who was in the cartel, Lalo, of course, or Jorge de Guzman. This would also help explain why we don't see much of Kim in Breaking Bad, or why we don't see Kim at all in Breaking Bad. But it would also give us an opportunity for Kim and Jimmy to reunite when Jimmy becomes Saul and then he becomes Gene in Nebraska. So I think that could make a lot of sense that Kim's going to get some shorter-term punishment coming up. My 6th prediction is that the Zafiro and Añejo tequila stopper, boy, I'm having a tough time saying that is not going to be used by Kim to kill Lalo. I've seen that prediction before. I just don't think Kim's going to be able to take out Lalo, at least physically, although maybe she might trick him into doing something else because she is quite smart. But I don't see that tequila stopper being used to kill Lalo. But that stopper is going to come on up later in the show. Not exactly sure how. I got to keep on ruminating on that one. My 7th prediction is that Kim and Jimmy are not living together in the giant house that we saw in episode 1 of season 6, Saul's house after he had to flee and become Gene, and then all of the stuff in his house was, basically getting demolished and thrown away. There will, however, be more Easter eggs from that house. Peter Gould, the show's co-creator, showrunner, has said that there's Easter eggs in the house, in that montage that we see in episode 1, that are going to make more sense when we've seen the full season. Now, key items that I saw in that montage are a bulletproof vest, a book called The Time Machine by H.G. Wells, which we've seen multiple times in Better Call Saul. So that's going to come up somehow, and maybe I need to do an analysis on that book and what it might mean. Another thing that I saw was the painting that was in Kim's apartment was also in Saul's house, and I think that's the same painting that has Howard's blood on it. So hope they got that cleaned out adequately so no one sees the blood there. I'm sure they did. Another thing that I saw was the black book, used by the vet, of course. And then there's also a picture of Mesa Verde, the Mesa Verde logo, in one of the boxes that they're packing up stuff in. So if I have more revelations about what those Easter eggs might be, I'll do a separate video on that. But I think that's something for us to think about, is what Easter eggs are in that montage that are going to come up in the storyline somehow. And again, I'm going to mess up the wording, but the Zafiro and Añejo tequila stopper, that's going to be big, as well as some other items that we see in that montage. My 8th prediction is that by the end of the series, both Kim and Jimmy will be alive, or I guess it's Gene at that point. They're going to be completely broken, but alive. And I do not think we are going to get a happy ending, despite what that teaser that we saw earlier said. My 9th prediction revolves around a new character. If you do not want to hear any analysis of the new character or know who the actor's name is, skip to the next prediction, please. You have been warned. Okay, so the new character is going to be named Marion, and they are going to be played by Carol Burnett. My guess is that Carol is playing Judge Papadumian. For those of you who do not know Carol, she's a very famous actor who is 89 years old. So we have to think about what kind of roles someone that age could play realistically. Others have floated the idea that she is Howard Hamlin's mom, and that is not a bad idea at all. I highly doubt she's some kind of private investigator simply because of her age. In terms of her being a judge, there are plenty of judges who work well into their 80s, so that could very realistically work. And we have been hearing about Judge Papadumian for years now, as she's referenced in Breaking Bad as well as in Better Call Saul multiple times, but no one has ever seen her before. One of my favorite scenes in maybe both of these TV series is when Hank and Saul are talking in Breaking Bad, and Hank says, "Where did you get your law degree, Goodman? The same clown college you got that suit?" And then Saul responds, "You know who likes this suit? Judge Papadumian. She thinks I'm a snappy dresser." And Saul, back when he was Jimmy in Better Call Saul, has made references to that judge also liking his attire as well. So really excited for this one. And yes, I think it's going to be Judge Papadumian. I think we're finally going to be able to see her. My 10th prediction is that we will unfortunately not see any of Gus's backstory related to Santiago. We know that Lalo knows about whatever happened in Santiago, and Gus has also had some kind of experience with the Madrigal guy, Peter Schuler, in Santiago. And I think they are going to let that be left unsaid. Now, when Gus was meeting with Schuler before, Gus had a really interesting line. He says to Schuler, "Do you remember Santiago? The two of us, our backs to the wall. I will never forget what you did. You will do whatever is necessary." And obviously, Lalo knows about that, but I do not think us, the viewers, are going to find out what happened in Santiago. I think we got too much storyline that we got to get through, so I don't think we're going to hear about that, although I would be happy to be wrong on that. My 11th prediction is I also do not think we're going to see Tuco in the remaining Better Call Saul episodes. Now, in Season 5, Lalo said that Tuco is in jail for 11 more months. According to the Better Call Saul timeline, Season 5 happened during April and May of 2004, and Season 6 is occurring in May and June of 2004. So unless they really speed up the timeline in the Better Call Saul timeline, I don't think we're going to see him. I don't think we're going to speed up that much because, again, there's so much that needs to be resolved among all of the bigger characters, all of the main characters, and we've got to resolve that before we get back to Gene, and I got to imagine we're going to spend a significant amount of time on Gene. So I don't think we're going to get Tuco, and that is not tight, unfortunately. My 12th prediction is that Jeff, the cab driver, is actually working for Kim, and Kim told him to get a message back to Saul, or Gene, excuse me. So I really hope he's not some random guy. That would be quite disappointing and kind of feel like it's a waste of time. The other theory that's been floated around is that he's going to come back to Gene and threaten to turn Gene in unless Gene gives him some money. That could be the case, but I've got this nagging feeling inside of me that somehow Kim's going to reappear in the Gene timeline, and it's going to make sense for Jeff to be connected to Kim in some way so that he can reunite them in that timeline. Because again, in all of my predictions, I'm predicting that there's going to be some kind of split up between them. Not that they necessarily want to, but they're going to have to split up for some reason. And obviously, Saul at the end of Breaking Bad goes to Omaha on his own. He's not going with anyone else, and it doesn't seem like he knows anyone else there. So they're going to be reunited some way. And so what I am thinking is that somehow Jeff the cab driver is going to play a part in bringing them back together. Now, I should also note, and I'll put this up on the screen, it does look like, it's not been confirmed, but it does look like Jeff the cab driver has been recast for a new actor. Pretty significant voice difference in my opinion, although they look fairly similar, but they're not exact. And yeah, it just looks like Jeff the cab driver, the original one, has had some kind of issue where he wasn't able to make season 6 work out for his schedule, and so they have a new actor in Jeff's place there. A little disappointing, but still going to be a great ending, and I'm still excited to see what happens with Jeff the cab driver. My 13th prediction is that Mike is going to kill Lalo, not Gus. It would be shocking to me if Lalo somehow survives beyond the Better Call Saul timeline, given how cautious Gus is with the lab while Lalo is still alive. And he's obviously going to complete that lab in the next few years before we get to Breaking Bad timeline. So we also need to consider that Gus taunts Hector in Breaking Bad that the Salamanca name is going to die with Hector. So Gus clearly thinks that Lalo is dead. And unless Lalo is able to fake out Gus and fake his death again, we have to assume that he's really going to die. I would love to be wrong here and have somehow Lalo survive Better Call Saul's timeline and defy most people's expectations, as long as it makes sense in the overall storyline. For Lalo to somehow reappear in the Breaking Bad timeline, or for him to be lingering out there, and then maybe we can have a subsequent show about Lalo being the remaining cartel person. That would be fantastic. I don't think that's going to happen. I think Lalo's going to die in the Better Call Saul timeline. And I think it's going to be at Mike's hand, which is also going to tie in to something that I've mentioned in one of my prior videos, which is Mike and Gus are extremely tight in Breaking Bad, but they're not as tight in Better Call Saul. And we saw earlier in season 6 when Tyrus actually put a gun to Mike's head because, you know, Gus and Mike were having disagreements about what to do with Nacho. I mean, Gus in Breaking Bad timeline would never put a gun to Mike's head. I mean, it's completely unfathomable. So we've got to assume that Mike's going to do something to garner Gus's trust, and I think that's going to be Mike killing Lalo, and that's going to bring them closer together. It's also going to cement Mike as Gus's number one, and that's why we're going to see Tyrus and Victor and everyone else taking orders solely from Mike in the Breaking Bad universe. So that's going to answer a number of questions if Mike kills Lalo and not Gus. My 14th prediction relates to the identity of Jimmy McGill. Now, Peter Gould once said that one of the main questions of the show is Jimmy McGill the underlying true core of this character that we see? In other words, throughout this entire universe, is he Jimmy McGill or is he Saul Goodman? That's the question that we're exploring here. I think we're definitely going to get more color to this question when we go back to the Gene scene. And I think we're going to see that he sees himself, that Jimmy / Saul, he sees himself and he identifies himself as Saul Goodman. I think he's going to remove all pretensions that he's Jimmy McGill or that he's a Cinnabon manager. I mean, he's not really a Cinnabon manager for more than a couple months or a year at the most. But he's going to remove all pretensions that he's someone else, and he's going to accept him being Saul Goodman. I also think that this is going to relate to what he does with the red coat in that image teaser for season 6. The question that the producers have asked is he putting on the coat or taking it off? I think he's putting it on again, becoming Saul again, and he's embracing his true identity as Saul Goodman. My 15th prediction is that the lawyer that Saul tells Francesca to call in season 4, episode 5 of Breaking Bad is going to be Ernesto, our favorite character that we have not seen in a while. Now, if you remember in season 4, episode 5, Saul tells Francesca that the cops are going to call, and then he hands her a business card of a lawyer that he is recommending she hire to represent her. And he says, quote, "Tell them that Jimmy McGill sent you." So who could that be? It cannot be Howard, rest in peace. I can't imagine it's going to be Bill Oakley, because they seem like they've drifted so far apart in season 6 of Better Call Saul, and because he's a prosecutor, he's not a defense attorney. It also can't be Kim, because Kim already knows who Francesca is and vice versa. Could it potentially be Cliff Main? I think it's unlikely given their past relationship there. Could it be Rich? Again, doubtful in my mind. So what if it's a callback to a fan favorite, genuine good guy Ernie, who got fired from HHM years prior? What if in the intervening years, maybe 5 or 6 years, whatever that ends up being, he has become a public defense attorney, and he definitely knows Jimmy as Jimmy, not as Saul Goodman. One last thing I want to point out is that when Ernie goes to tell Kim about Chuck's tape recorder, he never goes into the office that Kim and Jimmy share. So he stays on the outside, and we all know who's working on the inside there. Francesca is. So Ernie has never met as far as I can remember, he's never met Francesca. So it would make sense that Saul would have to explain to Francesca that this guy would know who Jimmy McGill is. It would basically tie everything together, and it would make sense that Francesca would not know who Ernie is, because I don't think she has ever met him one-on-one. My 16th prediction is that the same phone call referenced above, the November 12th, 3 p.m. phone call, is going to be with Kim. Now we have to remember, November 12th is Jimmy McGill's birthday. And what I said in a previous video is that it is quite odd that it has to be at that date and time. It seems like whoever he's calling is going to be restricted to call at that specific time. Because if Saul wanted to get in contact with someone and he was able to, he would just call them. But instead, there's this prearranged time where they're gonna be able to talk. And so this would make sense with my overall theory that Kim is in jail, or is she's in some other kind of situation like witness relocation where she has very restricted phone service. So obviously in jail, I'm not sure how phone calls work in jail, but witness relocation, you're not allowed to, or you're not supposed to, call people in your previous life because that might put you in jeopardy. But let's think about maybe Kim drives to a different town and jumps on payphone and calls Jimmy at that specific date and time, and then just touches base every single year with him. I also want to point out that I really don't think there's anyone else in Saul's life that would be so important to him that he would want to talk to other than Kim. So I just can't imagine it being someone other than Kim for this November 12th, 3 p.m. phone call. My 17th prediction, I give up. I'm completely stumped. I have no idea how Walt and Jesse are going to be integrated into this into this timeline. This is a quote from Peter Gould, and he said, "The thing that I'm really proud of is that we waited to see them until it was right for this story. Of course, the low-hanging fruit would have been for them to appear early in season 1 to kick the show off. I think the way they do appear is all about the story of Jimmy McGill and Kim Wexler and Mike Ehrmantraut. I hope you agree when you see it." So with that being said, it seems extremely unlikely in my mind that they're going to show up in the Better Call Saul timeline because, Walt hadn't even come close to Breaking Bad. Jesse's probably still in high school at this time. I just don't see it making sense for either of those guys to appear in Better Call Saul. I also don't think that we can see anything in the Gene timeline. Someone else had pointed the theory out that maybe Walt, when he's driving back from New Hampshire to Albuquerque, he stops in Omaha and he gets a Cinnabon there. Hey, maybe, but how does that relate, especially with this quote from Peter Gould, how does that relate to Kim Wexler and Mike Ehrmantraut? Mike's actually dead by this point, right? So I think whenever they appear, however they appear, it's going to be in the Breaking Bad timeline. But then I don't understand how it would relate to Kim Wexler if she's in jail. So maybe that's going to blow up my Kim Wexler being in jail theory, at least for the Breaking Bad portion. I'm not really sure, so I'm not even putting out a prediction here. I'm just thinking out loud. So enough of that. Let's move on to prediction number 18. Let's go to that famous line in Breaking Bad where Saul Goodman says, "It wasn't me, it was Ignacio." This might be the toughest prediction to make along with the Walt and Jesse prediction because there's so much going on in this scene. Saul in this scene clearly thinks that Ignacio is still alive because he's trying to blame him for something, and he's still very scared of Lalo. So he thinks that Lalo is still alive. How are they going to explain this, especially if, as I think, Lalo's going to end up dying in Better Call Saul's timeline? Well, one explanation could be that Mike does end up killing Lalo, as I predicted earlier, and he relays this to Saul/Jimmy at some point, but Jimmy doesn't believe it. Because Mike had told him earlier in season 6, in season 5, that Lalo was going to die. And he actually said Lalo is dead, and he said that to Jimmy. And so Jimmy believed it, and then obviously Jimmy was shocked when he saw Lalo come into his apartment. So what if What if Mike either kills Lalo or he knows for sure that Lalo is dead? It gets conveyed to Jimmy, but since Jimmy's been burned once by what Mike has said regarding Lalo, that Jimmy just doesn't believe him, and he completely brushes him off, and he still thinks in his mind that Lalo might be out there. I think that's conceivable, given the deteriorating trust that I think we're also going to see between Mike and Jimmy in these next 6 episodes. So there's a lot going on here. I think that explanation makes sense to me, but let me know if it doesn't or if I'm missing anything on that one in particular. My 19th prediction, I've said this before in another video, but I think Saul is ultimately going to atone for his sins. In some way, he's going to take responsibility for his actions. He's going to realize the carnage and the destruction and the pain that he has caused so many people, and he is going to own up for it. Again, I hope that's the case, but again, I might be wrong here. And my 20th prediction, relating very much to the last one, is that Gene, when he's putting on that red coat, he's going to do one last con, one last scheme to get Kim out of whatever trouble she is in, and I think ultimately that is going to sentence Gene to a very bad fate, whether that's jail or death. I'm not exactly sure, but I think in the very end he's going to embrace his Saul Goodman persona. I think he's going to do something to make up for whatever mistakes that he's made, and I think he's going to help Kim out in some way, and then in the end we are going to get a very unhappy ending where Saul has to deal with the terrible consequences of his actions. And so those are the 20 predictions I've got. I don't know if I'm going to be able to come up with any more videos before we get new episodes next week, but I cannot wait to see what they come up with in episode 8, and I'll be making more videos as more episodes get released. Again, thank you so much for watching, and if you like this, please give me a thumbs up, subscribe, and I will see you next time. Bye.